Welcome to a special Saturday morning at the 20th Zurich Film Festival. This is a festival where you can not only see some of the most anticipated titles of the fall film season, but where we also get time to get close up and personal with those we can usually only see on the big screen. So, without further ado, let's bring the man on stage you've all been waiting for. He will be presenting his new film, The Apprentice, tonight at the Congress House. You may also know him as, of course, Bucky Barnes, as the hapless ex-husband of Tonya Harding in I, Tonya, or if you're around the same age as me, you might remember the always mischievous Carter Bazin from Gossip Girl. So let's give a hearty round of applause to the man of the hour, Mr. Sebastian Stan.
Ex-husband.
Yeah. Ex-husband, yeah.
I know.
Of course.
Oh, God.
So, welcome to Zurich, Sebastian.
Thank you for having me.
I've just mentioned the movie you're here with tonight. It's called The Apprentice.
Yeah.
And most of the people in this room, they haven't seen the movie yet, but I assume they know that you're playing Donald Trump in this film. Donald Trump, a very omnipresent figure of politics over the past few decades, but he's also a man that, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here if I say that everyone in this room knows what he looks like, knows what he talks like, we know his mannerisms, we even know his speech cadence. So I was wondering, when you were first approached to take on this role, were you a bit more hesitant than with other roles?
Yeah, of course, because I think what you said is, this is somebody that everyone feels very strongly about, a lot of opinions. Some people really love him, other people really hate him, and it's also somebody that's, we can't escape. He's on our phones, he's on the news, he's on the internet. Your friend tells you, your neighbor has an impression of him, everybody does some kind of Donald Trump. So I think from the idea of, working against what you already have in your mind about him, coming into it and trying to find a new, fresh, different approach, where in a way I could try to illuminate maybe something about him we haven't really thought about yet, or we haven't explored enough of. I think that was going to be hard because, like I said, everyone's going to come to the movie with their own projections of the person. So, but I have played some roles in the past that were very different from me and that felt like a huge challenge at the time, and they sort of turned out okay, I guess, for me in a way. And so I had more confidence that maybe it was going to work out.
You just mentioned that everyone has a version or a parody of Trump ready to go. So where did you and Ali Abbasi, who directed the movie, where did you guys find each other just in terms of performance? What exactly you wanted to do?
Well, when I read the script, and I sort of had very strong feelings about it, and then I kind of did this little game with myself where I crossed out the names of the characters, and I went back and I reread it again, and it actually I sort of felt I was able to see it a little bit more clearly once I removed the big sort of stain on the windshield, if you will, and there was a story there about somebody that didn't feel too unlike all of us, who started out a certain way, had very specific ideas, dreams, aspirations, fears, insecurities, family issues, and had an aspiration, had an idea, and then something happened. Something really started to happen in a way, and the man to me seemed to lose the person that he was. He seemed to become something else, and so I tried to kind of think about that and see what I can understand from that. And we went deeply into the time period and in America, and also what it was that was happening in New York City at the time in the late 70s, the 80s, which brought on a whole new point of view, a whole new ideology of thinking, but really also kind of trying to understand this idea of the American dream and the hero complex that I find is very prevalent in America. The obsession with being all you can be, being the best of the best at everything, and winning, right? And so, and Ali to me was obviously someone I deeply admired, and I loved his work, and I had felt from the beginning of our conversations years before we started that had a real unique point of view on this situation, because he wasn't in America. He wasn't an American. He didn't play for any team of any colors. You know, he was somebody with his own history, with his own experience leaving Iran, living in Copenhagen, and really being very fearless with the kind of projects and the kind of questions he was asking and what he was taking on. And I thought, if anybody has anything to say that we're not thinking about on our end, being deep in it, then it's probably somebody who's not from America. And I think, and me, myself, having come from my own European upbringing when I was a child, I felt I was also asking in a similar way some questions of this American dream and this idea, and what and is it how helpful is it, and yet how destructive is it, and what is the cost of it? And so when you start thinking about the movie and Donald Trump from that perspective, then it becomes a very different story to me.
But of course, reading a script, reflecting on it, and planning everything is one thing. But then there comes the time where you actually have to put on the wig and look at yourself in the mirror. How did that feel when that happened for the first time?
Well, this was always a problem because everybody always said to me over and over again that you don't look like him, you don't look like him. And,
that's a good thing, by the way.
Yeah, and so I was like, I was actually starting to lose sleep over this, because I thought, wait a minute, I mean, maybe this is like, I'll never get anybody to believe this, and so we really had to try and find the right hair and makeup people to capture this thing, and we really didn't know how much or how little. I was always thinking that it's better. You've already seen so much of him in various different ways. I thought it was a better thing to go with less is more, right? If it was just more a person that had the essence and the energy and so on, maybe that will help people, relate or try to go on the journey for 2 hours without judgment. But we had to have some familiarity to him, and we didn't know how much. So we went through different prosthetic people, and because the movie would start and stop, we would lose money. Basically couldn't find the finance, and then we would have to start again. We eventually lost a lot of great people that were going to come and work on it. And so finally, when the movie came around, we had one prosthetics test which was not very good. It was really actually very it really didn't look like him at all. And I was very worried about that. I think we all were. And then we were talking about maybe me trying to gain some weight and trying to find different pieces. And then fortunately I called, the team that I had on the TV show, this TV show, Pam and Tommy, who helped me with the Tommy Lee stuff. And they came in and we were able to find the right balance, enough where it felt, okay, this is not really, I don't feel like myself, but it's still in the middle.
You mentioned that on the way and during financing, you lost some people who were supposed to work on the project. One person who you didn't lose is Jeremy Strong, who plays, especially in the first half of the movie, is directly opposite of you. He plays Roy Cohn. The first time we meet him, we think, oh, this guy is the devil. Interesting. So I was wondering, how did the two of you work on set together?
Well, Roy Cohn was the devil. I mean, a lot of people say that. Yeah, we really got along, you know. I mean, I had been a real fan of his. I'd seen him in different projects, and I always admired him because I felt he cared, you know. And everybody says they care, you know, but they care as long as it serves their interest. You know, but he cared in a very different way. He cared in the sense that he was after, he just wanted the reality, you know. He wanted the truth of the moment, the scene, the character. And so I felt that I was going to be in good hands with him because I felt that's only going to motivate me to do the same. And so I think we connected in a way that we had very similar ways of working. We met one time in a very similar way to Lake Club, like a month and a half before we started shooting. He was, you know, we got there, I was trying to like gain weight, he's trying to lose weight. So we're at the thing and I'm like, he's like, do you want to eat anything? And I said, no, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a burger with fries. And I was like, what do you want to have? And he was like, I'm just gonna order a cocktail. And I was like, okay. He goes, what do you want to drink? And I said, well, I'm not drinking now because, you know, he doesn't drink. And he goes, yeah, but you drink with me in the movie. So I'm like, okay, I guess. So it's interesting, like that was the only interaction we had where we were kind of, okay, like, is this gonna work? And we were already making certain decisions as it was gonna serve us later on. So I said, okay, we're on the same path. And then honestly, because we had such a crazy schedule and there was no time and there was no, I didn't really see him out of costume or character. You know, we would only meet on set basically as Roy and Donald. I mean, there was no time for dinners or hanging out or anything like that, you know. And I think that was good. I think it helped in a way. But you can only do that with somebody who is not afraid to sort of create that situation.
This obviously isn't the first time you've played a real-life person. I've already mentioned them in the introduction. You've played Tonya Harding's ex-husband. You've played Tommy Lee. Does playing someone who exists in the real world and is still around change the way you approach a role, just maybe preparation-wise, or also like during filming?
No, of course, because the difference is that you know what the goal is. You know, you have the target, and you just have to get there somehow. And I always think of it as that movie Apollo 13, you know, with Tom Hanks and Ron Howard, like when they're like the astronauts are off in space and they're gonna die and they have to bring him back, and then like the guy comes in there and he dumps on the table like all the stuff, and they're like, he takes a circle and he's like, it takes a circle and he's like, we have to take this and make it fit into like a square, you know. And like that's how I think of it. It's like you're handed this thing and then you have to somehow get in there and figure out how to, you know, fit into it, even though you're not that. But at least you know like what you're going after. And I think what happens is because it is a very well-known person, and the problem with this situation is it's really well-known and pop culture well-known, and you're so used to certain mannerisms, you're so used to like a voice and certain things that, like, you know, if it's too much, then you don't buy it. You know, if it's too little, then you're also not buying it because it's not enough of the person. So then it becomes about sort of like this very technical process, which I think is very similar to learning an instrument, right? When you're sitting there every day for a number of hours and you're listening and you're watching video and listening over and over and over again, and it starts out slowly and you're practicing, and it's slow and it's tiresome and annoying and you get angry, and then, like, you know, after a week you get a little faster, after a month you get a little bit faster, and then after a month and a half you're doing it in your sleep and you're not thinking about it, and it's just kind of like part of your system, you know. But it's the only thing about it that's different is that you have to, it's great because you have all this research, you have all this information you can get. You're not creating it, but at the same time, you have to find the familiarity.
And how is this with roles you've returned to over and over again? Bucky Barnes, for example.
Not a real person.
Not
I
a real
hate
person.
to tell you that, but
don't say that to them.
No, the real person.
No, I meant more in the way you just compared it to you compared it to learning an instrument, and I assume you've learned how to play that instrument called Bucky Barnes. And
well, the thing about action movies, okay, like, are really fucking hard. Like, I think that they don't get enough of the recognition. I mean, Tom Cruise is not a normal person, right? I mean, I don't know how he's doing what he's doing. It's not. You're not just naturally good at it, right? So that part is like learning an instrument, because you just have to look good doing action, or you're not an action person. But you know, that role is very special to me for many reasons. I mean, I've never thought that I would get to go and play the same role for 15 years as I aged, you know, and I keep aging, because then it's weird. It's like having it's almost like having a second life, you know, and then, or it's like seeing a family member, you know, over time you meet them again, and then you have all these new experiences to share with them. So I think of it that way with that character. You know, every time he's evolving, kind of along with me as I am, hopefully, in life.
And from a pure acting standpoint, is it like now a routine for you to slip into the role of Bucky, or do you find new angles every time you tackle a new project with him?
There are some things that are very easy, of course. I mean, it sort of slips in there. But it's interesting, on this last one, I was some things felt new, and there are things that feel new, because we've been trying to find new things with him, you know, and Marvel has allowed that opportunity to kind of go back and what I love about, for me at least, with that character is, the character's always evolving. It's not like he's a good guy and he's morally invincible, or walks this tightrope of being a virtuous person suddenly because he's overcome his past and he's just done, right? He's always having to deal with what he's done, what his history has been, kind of, and that's relatable. That's all of us. We're always confronting things in life and having to kind of maybe get better at how we handle them. And I think he's the same way. I think he remains human that way to me.
And so you've been in movies, in shows. You even lent your voice to an animated series of that whole Marvel universe. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight about how that process actually works? Is it like you just get a call and they say we need you again, or now that you're a veteran, do you have some kind of say? Or
No, it's pretty much like that every time. I sometimes, you know, we'll see them. I'll see them, or we'll get invited to a premiere of a movie, or there was, you know, Kevin Feige got his, and very deservingly so, his star on the Walk of Fame, and you see people, and it's always like, oh, maybe we'll see each other soon, right? And there's like, oh yeah, well we'll see. So it's like, it's always, then there's a call that comes, and then it's sort of like Christmas morning, you know, when the call comes. It's Santa Claus still lives.
So you've mentioned you've been now playing this role for close to 15 years. Your character has been around a lot in this universe, has seen a lot of different places, has seen a lot of different other characters. Is there one character or actor that you think, or a combination that you particularly enjoy when you're around them or in that situation?
Well, listen, I mean, I've always tried since early on, no matter what the project was or how small the part, I've always said, you know, you're only as good as the company you keep. And I think that way about life too, by the way. I think about that, about your friends and your family and things like that. I think it's better if you're the last person in the race. Do you know what I mean? If you're the fast, I mean, now I'm like stealing this from Quentin Tarantino, and I'm not like doing the quote well, but he said that thing about he doesn't want to be the fastest horse, because then he's always number one, and there's no growth, there's nothing, right? But you want to have people around you that tell you the truth, but then also, I think from a work standpoint, are more experienced or better, or are going to inspire something in you, and that's what I've always tried to do. And I was lucky to work with some really pretty incredible actors, you know, like Christopher Plummer, and obviously William Hurt, who's now gone. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., Nicole Kidman, Jessica Chastain. I've been lucky to be opposite some really very Meryl Streep, even, you know, and I always felt that I was going to be elevated by them.
Bucky isn't the first time you've played a role for multiple times. This kind of recurring work in your career. I also mentioned in my introduction Gossip Girl, for example. There was also Once Upon a Time. Back when TV productions were a bit different than they are today, this meant 22 episodes a year. Sounds extremely stressful and so on. But still, what feelings do you have when you look back on that time, especially that TV career time around the 2010s?
Oh, it was magical, honestly. I mean, for me at the time, to have a job in New York where I was living, and I was working with my friends. You know, I was 20-something. It was great. There were no iPhones. I mean, it was amazing. But it was a big learning lesson, absolutely, in a lot of ways. It was incredible to watch how popular that show was at the time. I mean, it really was. They kept referring to the second Sex and the City, which was a big deal, Sex and the City, and before that, and so it was great. I mean, it really helped with a lot of things.
And the name, I think your character name, Carter Bazin.
Right.
I still don't quite understand what kind of name that is, but I think I will never forget that name. You can ask me in 20 years
Some people never do.
Who?
I'll still get somebody when I get coffee once in a while. Go, Carter Mason. like it's like Fight Club or something, And they're like, but it's a weird. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if they knew what the hell that character was going to be. And then at one point they were just like, it doesn't make sense, but we should just have him like come back just in case. And I was always like, why am I not a regular on this show at this point? I was always number 6, like in basketball. There's always like the 6th man on the bench. You just bring him in when you need a little, lift, and then, but he never gets on the starting 5.
No, but it was always great when Carter came back because looking through your filmography, there's way more than just Gossip Girl, The Apprentice, and Bucky Barnes. Of course, it's really, really impressive to just look at the list of the many, many incredibly legendary directors you've already got to work with. I'm going to name a few: Ridley Scott, Jonathan Demme twice, Darren Aronofsky, Karen Kusama, Steven Soderbergh. Is there any of these collaborations you look back with a particular fondness? Or?
Yeah, of course. I mean, all of them in a way. It was that idea of like, it doesn't matter what the role is. It's just you just want to be in a movie with somebody like that where I can learn from. And The Martian was incredible. I mean, it really. I had so much fun on that movie. It was, and I walked away with some friends, I think. I mean, Kara Kusama is somebody who I've been always in awe of, and Darren Aronofsky. I still try. I mean, I've been keeping in touch with them about other things. It's just the right thing hasn't come along, but it's. I think we're in a director's medium. I mean, this is what it is. Movies are really director-driven and oriented, and I think TV has become that way as a result. A lot of the miniseries and things, you get these great directors. They'll do a pilot. They'll set the whole scene. So, director is really everything.
How does keeping in touch exactly look like? Is it like texts or emails or?
When you get a little more successful, they respond. They might not respond right away, but no. I mean, I think sometimes you have to. I don't know. I've been very aggressive about it in the sense of I'm okay saying to somebody, I really want to work with you. Like, I really admire you. I would love a chance. I would love a shot. Because people have always asked me that want to be actors, what can I do to, what is the right thing for me to do? How can I be an actor? And I'm always saying, I think sometimes it's okay for you to let people know that you want to work with them. Don't just assume that somebody expects that. Even someone great is still wants to hear once in a while, hey, I think, I love what you're doing and I'd love to find something to be of service to you.
I'm going to bring up another list, a list of things you've already played in terms of professions. You've played a former president of the US, you've played a NASCAR driver, a criminal, a superhero, a bounty hunter, albeit briefly, an astronaut. Yeah, you did. An FBI agent. So I was wondering, is there any profession you haven't got?
Did you say a cannibal? Is that what
No, I didn't say a cannibal. A bounty hunter? A cannibal? Yes, you played a cannibal, right? Of course, in Fresh, yeah.
I also don't want to leave out this movie I worked on that I'm very proud of, A Different Man. It's a film that just came out last week, and that was another really important step in my journey. And there I play an actor who has neurofibromatosis, very similar to Adam Pearson, who's an actor.
So out of the many professions I've just listed, is there any other profession where you're just waiting for the call that someone wants to get to play you? I don't know.
You mean in a movie,
Yeah.
or something.
Like,
Or any other profession.
Like, are you waiting for someone who says, Sebastian, I need you to play a firefighter? Or
I guess a firefighter would be, but no. But see, then it gets very no. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I never think about. I don't think of it that way. I don't think about what is the profession of a character. I think more about what is the like emotional situation of a character. You know, they could be doing anything, but I'm very curious in what drives people. Why do we make the decisions that we make? You know, I'm trying to figure that out for myself all the time, and I feel when I read something and it's what stands out most to me is trying to understand what the emotional needs of a person are.
And now that you mentioned that you're always trying to find out what drives a character, maybe circling back to the beginning of our conversation, now that you've spent multiple weeks, if not months, playing Donald Trump, did you get any closer to what drives him, or is this just impossible to find out when you're just playing a role?
Well, I mean, I'd be very curious about what a psychoanalyst or a therapist or psychiatrist would say, which I'm not. But as an actor, right, like you are this investigator and you're trying to kind of collect as much evidence as you can to solve the case. And I think in that particular regard, it seems to me that the need for power and control is so deep that it overpowers any other need. I'm not sure what I'm not sure what I mean. Obviously, our film explores some of the origin of that, and it's up to you to take away what you will as to why certain things are the way they are with him. But again, when you go back and you try to understand even narcissism, right? From the top of the malignant narcissism, which is the very, very highest, and all the way down, because we all have a degree of narcissism and stuff, but also just the need for power or things like that, is it comes from a place of having felt so powerless and so out of control and weak at some point that the experience must have been so traumatic, and the fear that what happens is you suppress it, and as a result, to cope with it, you create another kind of sort of superego and to deal with it because you're too young to be able to understand what's happening, and then that's kind of what ends up growing depending on what you're feeding. But I would say when we're talking about emotional needs, it feels to me that we're talking about somebody who has for whatever reasons of whatever has happened in his past has made a decision that no one will ever have more power than me ever, ever, ever again. I'm never going to be in a weak place ever, ever, ever again. And you got to ask yourself if a person like that can really make the right decisions, you know, as it pertains to other people. You know, it's when people are like, wow, oh, he's a flawed human being. Well, that's what we're talking about. That is a flaw. Like, that's a flaw, you know. It's not, and it's about the flaws that we all have, but that affect our decisions. And you know, if you're calling yourself the leader of the free world, then I think we have a right in questioning that.
You said that you really enjoyed Ali, the director's perspective to this story as some kind of outsider, or his outside perspective. You also mentioned his upbringing, with which you could somewhat connect to. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Like, you were born in Romania in the 80s. You lived in Vienna for a couple of years. Neither of them, like Switzerland, were necessarily a hotbed of cinema at that time. So can you tell us just what it was like growing up there, especially in relation to the cinema? Like, were there any key moments that awakened your love for the movies, or did they come later?
No, I mean, I think, when I was very young, I mean, I remember in Romania, like 1 hour of television every night, and it was always the news. And the greatest night in the world was New Year's Eve, because you could stay up all night and you had to dress up, and then they would play like cartoons, and it was like the first time you had like like multiple hours of television. So I know I never saw a movie when I was. The first movie I saw was when I got to Vienna, and it was Jurassic Park, and that was like crazy. And then the second one was Mrs. Doubtfire, and that was amazing. And then I guess I would always do impressions when I was a kid of just this neighbor we had, and just my grandmother and things like that. And so my mom always thought, oh, he should be doing this. And so for a while she was really trying to get me to do it. And then that's why in Vienna she took me to this open call for this Michael Haneke TV show, 61 Fragments, and then it was like a Romanian kid, for one episode in the subway system or something. So I did that, and then I actually remember really hating it and not having a good time at all, and just the waiting at night and everything. And so, unfortunately, my mom was just said, you know what, forget it, let's just not do it. It didn't force me into it, and it wasn't really until years later when I got to the States, I basically when we first got there, the move was so quick and sudden in the span of 2 months, and then we started living with another family who's still a close friends of ours, and they had this basement full of wall-to-wall VHS tapes of everything. And I just started watching all those movies, and so I saw, and I loved Jim Carrey, and I just loved movies, and then I ended up after a couple more years of wanting to be an astronaut and things like that, I ended up going to an acting camp, and then that changed everything.
And are Jurassic Park and Mrs. Doubtfire's movies you still cherish? Do you go back to them, or?
No, I love it. Yeah, I love them very much. Mrs. Doubtfire, I mean, it's unbelievable. That one and The Birdcage, I could probably watch any time, and I'll always feel good.
So you're vehemently anti-dinosaur.
No, I like the dinosaur. No, I mean, Jurassic Park was great. I mean, the idea was, it was amazing. It was like I would do anything to work with Steven Spielberg. I mean, it was such a great movie.
Maybe Steven Spielberg has a firefighter movie in plans. So two birds with one stone. Or you talked about A Different Man already. That's another movie that hasn't come out in Switzerland, by the way. I think it still hasn't got a distributor. So I hope someone's in the audience that takes care of that, because it's a great film. Can you say?
Were you able to see it?
I was at the premiere at the Berlinale.
Oh, great! So, okay, cool. I'm so glad you saw it.
I saw it. Yeah. Can you say a few more words about that film as well?
Yeah, I mean, that movie is so honestly like nothing I've ever worked on, and it's original. It's unique, and I love movies that are totally original, and everyone that has seen that film has just repeatedly said, I've never seen anything like it. And it's because I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, it's about an actor who has a real disease, neurofibromatosis, which are these tumors that happen to kids when they turn 3 or 4. And we've got Adam Pearson, who has the condition, who's an actor, and he's in the film as well. But I play this character who's an actor with neurofibromatosis, and he sort of lives a very typical, isolated, lonely life, and meets a friendly neighbor, and they kind of maybe take some sympathy on him, and there's a little hope there. But needless to say, he gets a call from his doctor and he says, hey, by the way, I think we have this experiment. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try this trial where maybe we can reduce these tumors and you can look like everybody else. So he goes and tries it out, and it works. And he starts to kind of, walk around like the rest of us. And he thinks that his whole life is going to change, and everything he's ever wanted is going to come to him, and actually it doesn't. He starts to get a 9-to-5 job and pretty much, gets bored like the rest of us and feels like, what's special about me? I at least when I used to walk around, they used to at least film me because I looked different. Now no one's even paying attention. And then he discovers that there was a play written about him, about his old self, by this neighbor, played by an incredible Renata Rainsby, who's unbelievable, as you know, I'm sure. And he can't believe this woman has written a play about their previous interactions. And so he desperately becomes obsessed with her and the play and is trying to find a way to communicate that it's him, and she doesn't believe it. And Adam Pearson comes along and is perfect for the part, which he would have been if he had stayed the way he was. And he sort of starts kind of going down a really bad path. And so I'll save it there. I don't know if you're still around for for the rest of the movie after that, but it's a really it's a movie about identity and self-acceptance, and I think it's so relatable. It's not only in terms of, I think it's special because the director, who's disfigured, really wanted to communicate and make a film about disfigurement and disability in a very different way than we've been used to, and he's done that. Not only does it flip around our whole ideas about that, but on a human level, it's just relatable because we're living in a world right now where I think our identities are being hijacked. We're interacting through these filters on our phones, and filters in how we should say, what should we not say, what is my opinion, am I going to get in trouble for it? That there's all of these implications now for originality and authenticity, and the film is also, in a very funny way, touching on how important it is not to lie to yourself about who you are.
So one last question from me before we open the floor to questions from the audience. We've now talked about the different men. We've talked about Bucky Barnes. We've talked about The Apprentice that I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are in this room right now will be seeing tonight. I suspect that most people in here have seen I, Tonya as well. So I was wondering, is there another movie from your filmography that you're particularly proud of, where you think, oh, it is a little bit underseen and more people should see it, so we can add it to our watch list right after tonight?
You're so kind for doing that. Oh God, I don't know. I worked on this movie called Monday in 2018.
Oh, great film. Yeah.
I'm glad you saw it.
By the Greek director, I'm afraid to pronounce his name, but I'm...
No, Argyris Papadimitriopoulos,
yes.
Yeah. And it's tough because that movie only came out in the pandemic, and I don't think many people saw it, but it was I have a very soft spot for it because it's also starring a really very talented actor, Denise Goth. And it's, if you've been in a relationship and you've tried to figure out how to do it, you'll understand. It's like, and I feel for it because a lot of it came from us just trying to make it as real and organic as possible. And I think it is. It's a beautiful film that I feel hasn't really gotten a lot of love, but and he's a great filmmaker.
Yes, Monday is the title. So let's open the floor for questions from the audience. Oh, I already see lots of hands. Yeah. And if you're, wenn ihr Berührungsängste wegen eures Englisch habt, ihr könnt die Frage auch einfach auf Deutsch stellen und ich übersetze dann für Sebastian.
Hi, I have a question. There are certain techniques to prepare for a role like Meissner or method. Is there a certain technique that works especially for you, or does that change depending on the role you're preparing for?
I mean, I think unfortunately, there's a lot of misconception and misinformation about, these things. I mean, I think it's different every time. I don't feel it's an amazing thing, right? And it's also kind of nerve-wracking because there are things that worked on the last project that maybe are not going to work here. I mean, so you're learning as you go every time, but I do feel like there is a degree, because it's about convincing. It's really, I saw this thing that Tom Hardy said somewhere, and he was like, it's about being convincing or it's not convincing. I mean, that's it. If you're going to believe it or you're not. So, but I do feel that if you are trying to not play yourself and you're trying not to do, your things that you do, that you get very good at doing, because they work and whatever, right? Like we all know how to kind of manipulate our people. I don't mean like with bad intentions, but you just have certain things you do. You're charming, you're a nice person, whatever. Or you don't call people back, whatever. I mean, everyone has their thing, and I'm saying if you're learning a new thing and you're trying to get that in your body, I don't know how to do that without like spending a certain amount of time in that situation until, like I said, it becomes like part of your system. So whatever you want to call that, I guess, is what it is.
First of all, I just wanted to say I'm a really big fan of yours and have been for a while. And you've been a big source of comfort for me, so thank you for that. And my question is, you've talked about constantly listening to Trump's voice and consuming content of his to prepare for this role. And I was wondering what that does to you as a person, and if you start to enjoy it in a way, or if it's more like a chore in a way, I guess.
I don't think any of this was really I don't think enjoyment is the word I would take for this experience. I did have moments when we were shooting the movie where I really felt I was being pushed, and we were with Ali and with Jeremy, where I was like, this is what it's about. There's no way I hope this happens again with other people, but this is it, and so that brought fulfillment. But no, that process is like really nerve-wracking because you have to get over your own like self-critic that's sitting there going, I don't believe it, I don't buy it, I don't buy it, I don't buy it. And then so at some point, you kind of get past it. But I'm like I really believe in fear. Like I've now made fear my friend, finally. With work, I don't know about life, but in work, fear is my friend. So if I'm, I won't stop until, I feel I got there somehow. So that keeps me motivated.
Next one.
Sorry, I'm really nervous. I just wanted to say that as a Balkan immigrant kid, it's really nice to see someone succeed in pop culture. And then my question would be, you sort of play these harrowing characters sometimes in I, Tonya and also in Fresh. And I know that in The Apprentice there is a scene which is very controversial. And how do you approach a role where you play sort of a woman's biggest nightmare?
Tough questions only today.
Well, you know, if it's in the script, right, and I didn't write it, and I'm coming to it, and then I know, okay, well, I have to. This is part of the situation. This is part of what's being asked of me now, and you know, I think another big hurdle is that you have to look at your feelings towards something that you're about to do, like a project, a movie, and you have to be really diligent and strict with yourself and honest as to what feelings that you have initially as you will work for you and which will work against you. And the ones that will work against you, no matter how empathetic they may be, you have to discard, like for the time being, in order to try to serve the story and serve the point. And but you know, you're always being conscious in the conversation with your collaborators to make sure that everybody feels on the same page. Is this something is this necessary? Is this do we need to have these things in the movie? What is the vision of this filmmaker? Why does he feel this is important, you know? And so then you can understand why you're going to go there, and then you try to create trust, and hopefully you can get to what's needed. I wish Ali was here, because I don't want to speak for him, you know. But it's interesting listening to him speak about that film, and that scene, because he's referred to it numerous times as, why is it controversial? And I think what he was getting to is when you're looking at the facts, right? What this film is trying to do, at least, is it's not. And that's what people love and hate about it. And I think in 5 to 10 years, it's going to really speak for itself, because now we're too close to the sun to really see it. But you can't. It's easier to make a movie that's one way or the other way, because then it just gives people sort of permission to sort of feel a certain way. Unfortunately, in life, the truth is a little bit more gray. And what happens is sometimes good people are capable of bad things, and bad people sometimes, believe it or not, can actually do something that resembles good. And it's deceiving, right? And as it pertains to this film and that, you can't ignore her deposition, which she went on record to say about what happened, and she went in great detail to actually explain graphically what went on, much more than what ended up being in the book. But there was a question there of okay, so she's given this deposition under oath, and then she's retracted it in front of lawyers and said the opposite. What is closer to the truth? You know, that was a choice that the writer Gabriel Sherman decided to go with. That maybe under oath is probably closer to the truth, and that's what we went with. But you can't tell the story without including that part of their relationship and also that part of his character.
So we're going to take one more. Final question, make it count.
No.
So first of all, I think it's obvious, but I'm also a very big fan, and I'm an acting student myself, so you're like a really big role model for me. And also, you said before, actors are allowed to say when they want to work with people, so I would really like to work with you one day.
No, I appreciate it. Well, you never know. I mean, I don't know.
And so my question is, you play lots of like really difficult roles, and also with like sometimes really tragic backstories. Have you ever had like problems disconnecting from these characters, or like breaking the habits from them?
Have I ever had problems disconnecting?
Like just keeping the distance to these tragic stories or hard stories or something.
Keeping the distance. I mean, I think like when you're, you know, I think the hardest time is always like before you start. You know, it's always a crazy time because you can't rule anything out. I mean, there's some things you rule out. Sometimes you try things and you see they don't work, but then you go, what if it worked like this? And that's a lot of what I think you're talking about is like you have your own kind of self-truth, and that's telling you things. But then when you start, like once you've made the choices and the decisions, then there's no turning back until it's done, you know. But I think that there's no, usually because some of these hard projects there's not a lot of time to shoot them in, you know. I mean, The Different Man was 22 days. This was really quick also. So there's no time for second guessing. You have to really just commit, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately.
So Sebastian's new movie, The Apprentice, plays tonight at the festival. And
how many people
night.
are going to see it tonight? Okay, that's good.
And if you should not be able to catch it tonight or tomorrow night, the film opens on Thursday, wide here in Switzerland. So this is your next chance to see Sebastian on screen. And I'd say it's time for a hearty Zurich applause for the man of the hour. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Sebastian.
man. Thank you.